welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the Writer's Bookshelf. So as you probably figured out, we are at the end of the season, which means we are at the end of the writing process, and that probably means that maybe we're going to be working on something having to do with revision. Well, guess what? That is exactly what we're doing today with Troubleshooting Your Novel by Stephen James. And if you recognize that name, if you go way back to last year, we did one called Story Trump Structure, which was sort of like the Pantser's version of how to write a novel from beginning to end, which you'll remember that we followed that up with all the stuff I did with Larry Brooks's books, Story Engineering, Story Physics, and Story Fix. Well, Troubleshooting Your Novel follows that same tradition, except this time from the Pantser's point of view. Stephen James, his books I highly recommend. Obviously, I'm covering one today. It comes from the perspective of organic writing. I personally prefer organic writing. I don't, the whole Pantser term I think is stupid. But if you go back to like our old topics when you refer to writing with structure and all of that, or writing even with a plan, the revision process from the planner's point of view has its place. So like when we talked about Story Fix, we talked about revising from the planner's point of view. Troubleshooting Your Novel I believe is based off of the Pantsers, or the organic writers, or dynamic writers, however you want to call it, from that point of view, which means you've already got your first draft, and now you got to figure out what to do with it. So what he does is, this is actually a fairly thick book. This is over 300 pages. It took me a while to get through it, and it's got 80 chapters, roughly. I think about 80 even. And each one covers different genre, different parts of the writing process. So, for example, chapter 56, we cover transitions as one option. And what about transitions? Well, transitions between setting scenes, chapters, and point of view characters are four of the most common areas where authors disorient readers. You never want to confuse and frustrate the people reading your book or leave them thinking, so where are all those characters now? I can't picture this at all. Or who's there with that guy? How many people are in the room? Did it switch to another point of view? And what's going on here? So part of the discussion here is that when you're going through and reading your manuscript and checking to see what's wrong with it, because your first draft, there will be plenty wrong with it, especially if you're pantsing your way through it, or dynamic writing. We're going to call it dynamic writing until I forget that I said that and go back to the word pantsing, which I don't like, but for some reason it's ingrained in my head because, we've all gone there. If you are in a position where you've written a manuscript that you've created through organic process writing, you know that you're going to have some mistakes in there, and that you need to go through and identify what the problem areas are. What I like about this book is it goes through kind of a checklist similar to what we did last time with Matt Bird's Secrets of Story. Sorry, I actually recorded that video a while back, so I'm trying to remember what my last video was. The Secrets of Story, that has this kind of a similar principle where you go through and look for any area where your story can benefit from a certain tactic or a certain approach. And then if you go even further back than that to the Great Stories Don't Write Themselves, also by Larry Brooks, that's another one where you got the checklist of things you can check for in order to see whether or not your story's working. This book, again, same kind of principle, but what this book does is this book actually goes through a diagnostic. So like if you need to double check whether or not your antagonism works, you can go through and read the chapter, and the chapters are short. This one in particular, it's about 5 pages. It's like, here's roughly the length of each chapter. You can really treat them like just articles from like any Writer's Digest magazine, and go through and verify like what Stephen James says about that topic, and then go back and consider what your manuscript does to respond to that. It's like with antagonism, they talk about, your story might not have a bad guy. Your characters could be trying to survive together on a deserted island after a shipwreck, or they might be trapped on a disabled spaceship that's running out of air, or they could be stuck in a flooding cellar during a hurricane. Actually, that just happened in New York like last week. That's pretty sad and relevant. But in those cases, the abandonment, the isolation, and the rising water would be the forces of antagonism that your character is facing. Although a novel doesn't need a villain, it will need verses. The character versus his perceptions of himself. He believes he's a failure, the limitations of his situation, he's disabled, must learn to walk again, and so on. It's giving you a perspective of what the different elements are so that you can approach them logistically and tackle them with things that make sense. So your chapter setup is fairly basic. I know sometimes we have these writing books that have their set structures and they have prescriptions to each way you approach. And this one's main prescriptive design is you have your opening section to what is the topic about, and then you have your quote. So your block quote up here, hopefully you can see that. This is the element that kind of gives you the snapshot of what the section's about. So in this case, stories are built on the bedrock of unmet desire. Forces of antagonism serve to hinder that desire from being met. So it's just really a snapshot view of what your approach is and what to kind of think in the back of your mind as you're approaching that in your rewrite. And then of course you have the fix. So you have, in this case, fixing antagonism issues. This is the core part of the chapters because, again, what's the story called, or the book called? It's called Troubleshooting Your Novel. There's no troubleshooting without fixing. So you are identifying the problem, but then you have to fix the problem. So in this case, he gives you tips on how to fix the problem that may show up. And that's really the main thing. So then they go through the list of the different ways you might fix the problem. So like one example, make them callous rather than sadistic. A truly heartless person, others are simply objects to be used, no different than cattle to be slaughtered. A villain is more unnerving when he doesn't revel in people's pain, but simply doesn't care if others suffer. So, there's just one of the possible ways of fixing the problem there. And then at the end, you have your quick fix block. Okay. So, the quick fix here, how should the hero battle the villain? Quick answer is alone. And then he goes into explain, the hero will fight with a courage and virtue, and often the villain will respond with treachery and deceit. As they face off, the antagonist might force the protagonist into a wrenching moral dilemma or put innocent lives at risk. Your hero is constrained by morality and will respond in a way that readers respect. If you're telling a story that upholds the theme of virtue triumphing over vice, over the villain's downfall will result from his own pride, greed, or cowardice. And then you have your fine-tuning the manuscript section, which is just a quick thing of quick bullet list of fixes. And that's really each chapter, and you have 80 of them, and they're broken by section. And obviously, if you've gone through this series, and if you looked at every book I've recommended, you'll know that there's a theme here. They all have a particular design that is there to help you be able to see what works in a story and what doesn't. And you may notice that it doesn't always focus on a particular 3-act structure or particular formulas or anything of that nature. What they do is each one of these hopefully will encourage you to take a look at your story for what it is and what you're trying to accomplish. And it'll challenge you on the basic premise of questioning whether or not you even have a story here. Because let's be honest, not everything you write is a story. Sometimes it's just an anecdote. Sometimes it's just a scene of things that happen. And a real scene, a scene that actually matters, is one that moves. And it's one that goes from point A to point B with purpose. And usually with a causality, which means you're going to be leading into another scene that kind of is a reflection of what just came through. And when you look at the theme of all the books we've covered, hopefully you'll be able to see that this is ultimately the goal of learning how to write properly. Is it's really just about how to train your thinking in order to move from point A to point B logically and seamlessly while still giving readers what they want and satisfying whatever they're looking for in your work. So that's really the theme with all of this stuff. And this book here is just another example of one that can help you fine tune that. I mean, if you look at the very first chapter, it's on orientation, meaning make sure the reader understands what's going on. But look at the second chapter. The second chapter is causality. Hopefully you can see that again. Causality is the action reaction going from scene to scene. It's really a matter of these are top level concerns in your writing. You got to make sure that your work reflects that, or it's not going to work at all. So just kind of last note on this is that if you look at the table of contents, you will find that once again you've got all the part 1s, part 2s, and things. Just a quick overview of what's offered in here. I'm not going to read all the chapters because there's 80 of them, and that's too many. But for parts, you have story progressions, part 1, characterizations, part 2, Narrative techniques are part 3, and then reader engagement. That's an interesting one, part 4. I am going to read the list of reader engagement because I think it's really it's one that's fairly unique to the writing space that a lot of the other books we cover don't actually tackle. And then part 5, style and finesse. That's like all of your grammar, your making sure that things are continuous, things that make sure you have some brevity in your. So in other words, don't write more than you need. So that's that last section. Then you have a conclusion and all that. So with part 4, I want to go through this list as it's interesting. You have chapter 64 is on expectations. So what is the reader looking for when they're opening your book? Will you satisfy those expectations? So for example, if you followed my series at all in the last 45, 46 episodes, you should know that by now you expect me to open with my little logo of my bookshelf. You expect to see the little book rising, which are those are just branding expectations. That's not really why you're watching the video. Hopefully, what you're actually looking for is you're looking for kind of a critique or review of the book that I'm featuring. And I think by now one of the things you might expect from one of these videos is the interior shot, where I actually show you the inside. And if I don't do that, I've already kind of gone against the expectation that I've already established in previous episodes. So an expectation is something that your reader is looking for. And of course, the most obvious expectation is you're watching the video in order to find out more about this book. And if I never talk about this book, I've already ruined the expectation. So it's the same thing in our regular writing. Is we whenever we're setting up any kind of book, like Jack Reacher, I'm reading The Hard Way right now, which is another really good one. They're all good. But I'm really enjoying this one. I almost didn't go to sleep last night because I think I read like 100 pages straight. But expectations of Jack Reacher is he comes in basically he's just minding his own business, and he gets caught up in something mundane that turns into something crazy, which is this book delivers on all fronts. It's like a mystery. It's like halfway through you have the twist that you kind of expect, but you're kind of expecting it coming from a different direction than what he gives you. And there's just all these little things that make up a classic mystery thriller genre type that Jack Reacher falls into, and this book is hitting all the same notes. And I'm pleasantly satisfied, even though I kind of feel like I know where it's going. I think that comes from just having read so many of them that it becomes a little easier to figure out where the book's going, but it doesn't make it less satisfying. It's just satisfying in the sense that I can more easily expect to know where to go with it. The point is it hasn't turned into a sci-fi novel. It has not turned into a road trip buddy cop movie or anything like that. I'm still getting the classic experience because my expectations, like Lee Child knows what I expect out of this book now that this is the 10th one. And again, I'm reading them in order. I know there's like over 20 something, but anyway, just putting that out there. Chapter 65 is anticipation. So what is how do you set up the reader's not expectation, but how you anticipate what's coming. Then promises, again, these are all kind of in the same realm, just different nuances of that realm. Emotion, can you get the reader interested in what you're saying and invest it into it? Longing, this is something where it's like an expectation that leads to wanting to see the outcome, I believe, is the emphasis on that particular chapter. Trust is, this one's most important. But the trust issue is when you deliver on your expectation. In other words, you are maintaining the idea that your reader is going to get what the reader has paid the money to get. So for me, I'm trying my best to fulfill your trust by giving you the information on this book, the best information that I can without spoiling the whole thing. Obviously, at some point, you're going to have to open the book yourself and get your own take on it, but I can't really tell you should get it without explaining what's in it. And if I tell you, hey, you should get this, and never once open the book, I don't really build the trust, because who am I and what is this book, and why should you spend $20 on it, which I think is the going price. Yes. So that's something else. Empathy, truth are the last two in that section. So it's all really interesting things to consider when you're going through each section. It's going to cover every facet of what's important to your work. And it's going to do so in a way that's practical. It doesn't take long to get through each chapter. It does take long to get through the whole book because there's so many of them. But if you spend a chapter a day going through your work and just testing to see if you're actually measuring up to what the suggestions are, and for some it may take more than a single day. Like the early chapters, I would imagine would take probably several days, just because you're talking about story issues that span from cover to cover. So you'd still need to be able to look through your entire work to see where you mess up on those areas. But as you get more into the fine-tuning stuff, that I think is a little quicker and easier, especially when you get more familiar with where things are located in your book, and hopefully by then you'd also develop a sense of what's working and what isn't. But anyway, that's what troubleshooting your novel is all about. It's again, it's a revision book. It's not a how-to. By the whole point of troubleshooting your novel is it assumes you've already written the book, so it's not going to tell you how to get started. It's not going to tell you anything of that nature. It's all about did you screw it up so badly, or how can you fix it? Assuming that you screwed something up. I mean, it assumes you screwed something up. That's sort of the point. And again, it comes from the perspective of the organic writer, not so much the planner, even though planners will certainly get a lot out of it, I think. One of his arguments in the book, and I agree with it, this is one of the reasons why I was an organic writer for so long. I more in the mixed realm now, which I think is a pretty comfortable place to be. But one of his arguments against planning is if you marry yourself to the plan or the outline, your characters may not ring true anymore. In other words, they may do things that are against their either their skill or what's natural to the way they've been developed on the page. And by following the outline, you may actually betray the reader trust because the character is doing something that is not normal. So it just, if you can think of any example where you've written yourself into a corner because you follow the outline, but now it just, you feel like, well, I have to, for the outline to work, I have to make this character do something that he or she wouldn't normally do. Like right there, you already should have the red flag and just say, okay, well, maybe I need to change the outcome, and just let the nature of the story that wants to be told. So he's gonna do a lot of that recommendation when it comes to coming from the organic side of things, meaning figure out who your characters are through the storytelling, not like what they look like or anything like that, but how do they respond to crises, for example. These are the things that if you're being authentic to the characters and letting them speak for themselves, your outline will be challenged. And so if you allow yourself to let the outline kind of go away and let the characters do what they want in order, as they progress toward their goal, then you can also use that final result as a place to begin your troubleshooting. And then, again, look for those areas where maybe things can fix. And there's going to be there's going to be a for and against camp on both planning and organic writing, because the planners insist that if you just write off the seat of your pants, as they call it, your character may end up somewhere that's completely unrelated to the story. And I agree with that. It's easy to go off on a tangent because in real life, we are resistant to our goals. Even if we have a well-meaning goal, anytime that we're putting ourselves, anytime we're committing to an outcome, then that adds pressure to our time, to our goals, to our abilities, and it raises our resistance to wanting to follow through on those. And our characters aren't much different if they're human beings. They're going to take on a lot of the same qualities where they're going to resist going, because probably as authors we're going to resist it if we were in their shoes. So it's easy to go off track when we're dynamically writing, but this is where being true to the character and being focused on the end goal are also important. So sometimes you have to, in order for your character to become a hero, the hero has to rise above his or her concerns or rise above his or her resistances. So I do think that there's a place where you can organically write and still get to your end point without sacrificing the design, without falling outside of the structure that we typically look for. But if you go back to story term structure, I mean, his whole point of view isn't even structure itself, but is there enough here to keep the reader reading? Because really, your ultimate goal isn't even to follow 3-act structure or make a point about this or that. Your ultimate goal is to get your reader from the first page to the last page and have them close it happy. I mean, it's really that simple. And you can certainly decide how you want to get there, whether you need the outline or, again, one of my processes lately has been have a general overview of an idea of where I want. And I've been doing a lot of thinking in my head too on what I want and trying to imagine how that plays out, imagining what the ending is. And one of my biggest challenges is just simplifying the plot enough to where it's like I'm not trying to do everything at once. Like if you can say, Jack Reacher stops bad guy, that's your plot, then that's simple enough. Then you might fill in a little bit of the details in order to make that a little more based on the story that you're reading. So with the hard way, can he find the kidnapped people before they're dead? Or find the kidnapper, for revenge if they are dead. Those are the two questions that come up. But of course, other questions start to emerge as you read more and more. And I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't read it yet. But the idea is it starts off in a simple place, and its dramatic question ends at a simple place. And what happens, between the beginning and the end, really comes down to what the story's needs are. And depending on what type of story you're writing, you may have multiple, threads branching out that you're trying to rein back in, and that's fine if that's the case, as long as you're still moving toward that end goal. An outline may not always work well because you're trying to force a line based on scenes that you haven't crafted yet, so you don't really know how the scenes will naturally play out. So I'm in the camp where I like to have the destination, and then I'll probably do a mini synopsis for what I would like to do, but I leave it open to interpretation. I leave it to the point where I'm still going to write the scene based on the snapshot that I've written and see what happens, and then at some point I'll reevaluate the direction I'm going and seeing if I have to make any adjustments. I just find that's the easiest way to kind of keep up with things. So depending on what your style is, you'll find ways for it all to work. But I do think that the best way to make your story work is to go back and have some accountability of recognizing what things work, what things are false, what things break trust, and all of that, and be own up to the mistakes, be responsible, and then fix them to the best of your ability. And again, I think that that's what this book does best, is it helps you identify those items so that you can fix and be true to the story and give the reader experience what they paid the money for, assuming they paid money for it, unless you're one of my readers, in which case it's all free. No, I'm kidding. Thank you, by the way, to all of you who have purchased my books over the years and helped. I do want to let you know that my website should be wrapping up here soon, if it's not already. And I plan to have some things for you guys. I know it's very vague, but just go and check the website when you can, and hopefully I'll have some things for readers that will be of benefit to you. But anyway, that's a sidebar. I just wanted to kind of reiterate that we do want to keep our readers around. We do want to bring readers back for more. We would like to get paid for our work, which means we want to be able to write work that's compelling enough to warrant the transaction. And for the reader who paid is $4 to $6 on an ebook, or 15 to 20 on a regular paperback or hardcover, will get his money's worth. So that's important, I think. Anyhow, that's it for now as far as this book goes. I do hope you all check it out. Again, Troubleshooting Your Novel by Stephen James. One more time. There's the back cover. Take your story to the next level of excellence. I think it's worth it. It's one that you don't need to digest in quick bites. You can take it as you go, like anything else. Regarding the series, this was the last one for season 2 that's official. We will have a few bonus episodes coming up. I had plans on doing one of my dictionaries as our first bonus, but I'm going to push that back probably a month, because the next Thesaurus from Angela Ackerman and Bella Puglisi. Puglisi. I always mess that name up. It was announced a few weeks ago. It's going to be on conflict, so I am going to cover that probably next. That should hopefully be early November, depending on when I get it, because I think it releases in October. So it's going to, the time it takes to get to my house will depend on when it goes live. But I think I'm going to be doing that first, and I believe they're part 2. It's going to be 2 parts. Part 2 is going to be sometime in early 2022, so that'll probably be the last bonus. So I had planned on doing 4. I may do as many as 6 because of these books coming out. Or I may also knock one of my previously planned ones off the bonus list because I don't even know if it's really, I haven't looked at it yet, so I'm not sure if it's appropriate. Anyway, but that'll be the end of season 2. Season 3, I don't know when it's going to start because this took a lot out of me. There was 26 books that I had to read through, and I mean some of them I've already read, but a lot of them I hadn't read until this season. And that's just, it's a big chunk of my time and my mental energy. So I may be delaying the release of season 3 until the summertime at the earliest. I was planning on March, but I'm starting to think that might not be realistic just because, again, I need a break. So we may have a temporary pause between the last bonus and the beginning of season 3. The other thing, too, is don't forget, if you guys like this series and you think there's others that will benefit from it, you should share the video. Because the video counts are very low compared to what I want to see for this series. As always, I want to justify my reasons for bringing them to you. And part of it is just knowing you're going to watch it. I don't want to do this for myself because I've already read the books. If it's all for me, then, there's not much point doing it. So if you are benefiting from it, make sure you comment, do your likes and all that. But do share also. If you have a video from earlier in the season you want to pass along to one of your friends or writing partners or whatever, do so. And the more we can get them spread out, the more I think it'll help the writers of these books make more books. Although, let's be honest, at some point you probably read enough, and I get that. You will have a point where you don't need to read these anymore, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't share them with new writers. So if you have somebody who you think would benefit from knowing about these books, do share the videos. Warn them that the video quality is not professional because I have a webcam and I'm not rich. So, make sure they can go in with their expectations tempered. It's not going to be a mega budget production here. But the important thing is it gets the message across, and really what's the point of watching it if you're not going to get the message? So there's that. And then again, if you want to support the channel, check out the books that I have posted below. And just give me some ideas on what you want to see in the future. That will also help because I do have plans for the next season and probably the season after that. But at some point, if this goes on, I'm going to be running out of ideas. I may just retire the series at that point. But I want to make sure you guys have what you want. So if you have a request, do feel free to ask. And then the other thing is, if I have not started it already, I want to ask you guys, what do you think of the idea of me doing a reader's bookshelf? I had planned on starting one in August. That didn't happen, and I'm not sure if I'm going to have it done in September either, because I don't fully know what I want to do with it yet, because I don't want it to be just about, hey, here's what's in this book. I want it to be about something a little more, I guess, important in the kind of reader space, because again, if I just tell you what the book is about, you can just read the back of the book and that's it. I want it to be something that's valuable to the reading community, and I don't know quite how to angle that yet, so I'm still trying to think about what that's going to look like. But if you are interested in the idea of looking at particular works of fiction as important pieces of literature for whatever reason, or whatever the case may be, do let me know in the comments if you're interested in that. And that tells me two things: A, that you are interested in me, you're still watching. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in hearing more about that. And then if you have any other questions, visit my website. I believe it'll be open by the time this airs. I know I say that in every video, but as of this recording, I'm actually getting ready to open it. Like, I'm probably about 2 or 3 weeks away from actually, as long as nothing breaks and has a catastrophic blow up, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be opening it in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So by the time this airs, that should already happen. So do check out the site. and poke around in it and tell me if there's any features in there you like that you want to support. I have, it's called a book ideas generator already live. You just go in and you write an idea of the type of book you want to read, and then other readers can vote on that. And if there's an author out there who wants to take on that challenge, they can let me know, or they can just write it whenever and let me know that it's in production, and I can move it on to the roadmap of future books that they're working on. But I would like to see more people participate in that as well. So even if you just would go in and for that reason alone, even if it's not for my books, that's all good. And then I have another plan. I don't want to announce it yet because I haven't fully fleshed it out, but I got another plan that's going to be really, really helpful for those looking for the perfect book. And so that's another reason to stay tuned to what I'm doing on my website, because if all goes well, I'll have something else really interesting for you guys. It will take a participation from writers and readers, but assuming everybody participates, I think it'll be a really good thing. So, but I'll talk more about that as I bring that to an opening. So anyway, that's it for today. So thanks for watching, and thanks for sticking with the Writer's Bookshelf if you are one of the regular viewers. We will do a bonus in early November, and then it will be every Friday, every first Friday of the month until I run out of bonus materials, which again, it'll either be 4 or 6 episodes of that. And then season 3, I don't want to promise a launch date yet, because I want to make sure I'm recovered and I got all my energy back, but I'm going to speculate probably late spring, early summer is the most likely time we'll open that up. But we'll get there, hopefully. So I do plan to do a season 3. So for those of you who like the series, there will be more. And if you also want to see a recap like I did with season 1, let me know there too. I thought that went pretty well. So if you would like me to recap season 2, I will. But just leave a comment. Alrighty, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and have a good day, and be safe, and do all the things YouTubers tell you to do, and don't do any of the things that other people tell you to do if it's not a good thing to do. So, yeah. Anyway. Alrighty. Take care. Until next time. Bye.